Well, hello, welcome back to Tale 3 Cabins. Today I want to talk about the actual cost of what it took us to build this project down here in Southern Ohio. This is a replacement home for the cabin that we used to have set here. If you've watched my videos, you've kind of watched the whole series and the progression it's been taken for about the last 6 months from tearing down the old cabin to putting this place up, having it erected, us slowly, steadily trying to get it worked out on the inside and furnished, and then of course finishing stuff on the outside, which there's a lot of work to do left on the outside. So one of our more popular series of videos was putting up our pole barn in Northern Ohio. And I thought that a lot of people would be interested in just the background of this project here, the cost of everything. There's a lot of folks that are thinking about putting up a prefab home and just some of the things to consider when you're doing it. And then if you want to go back and watch more of the videos on doing this in detail, I'll try to make a nice playlist that goes in order of the things we did on it and leave a link at the end for you. So first up, deciding what you want to build. We decided that we wanted to go prefab because trying to build a conventional house down here in Southern Ohio was just going to be out of our price range. And for a while we didn't think we were going to build anything at all. And then we started looking at some prefab homes. We had done it before and then kind of just let it on the wayside. And then we picked it up, the idea again, started looking around. And we found something that we thought was in our budget. So this house here is around 1,400 square feet. It is just one story. It's prefab. It's considered a double wide. But you could also consider getting a modular home, which many modular homes might have multiple stories. And you could just get a single wide. So that's most of the prefab homes out there are either a single wide, double wide, or a modular. If you're going to be going with a single wide or a double wide, you're usually going to build it on some sort of slab would be the cheapest, or you would put it on a crawl space type of foundation, but you usually do not want to put it over a basement because there's a lot of pedestals involved underneath this, and really having a basement on these pedestals would just interfere. Originally we were hoping to maybe have a drive-in garage under whatever we built, and that would just not work with this type of home. Now if you go with modular homes, you can put those on a regular basement foundation. So the cost, now that's the biggest factor with anybody that's going to be working with building a new home nowadays. So here the cost, and right out front, this was $117,900 for just the house. And that included delivery of the house, that included hooking up to the utilities. The utilities already had to be set here somehow. Pipes had to be underneath the foundation where the house was going to go. And then if you wanted to add things like air conditioning, that was another $3,500. And then just depending on your foundation and what type of clearing you have to do on your lot. But just the house itself, $117,900. So that sounds reasonable, and then you have to think about all the factors to get that house here and set on top of something. Do you have to hook up electric? What do you need for water? And same thing with septic or sewer. So let's talk a type of lot. If you just have a nice flat lot that already has utilities, and that's probably going to be your cheapest route. The cheapest way to go with one of these types of homes would be just putting a concrete slab. That usually involves them to put skirting around it once the house is set, and then your utilities are under there. So there's a few little things that bother me about that method. Skirting is not the most reliable when it comes to keeping out rodents. Parts of it might break down over time, or maybe you're weed whacking and you could damage some of the skirting around there and create breaches. So we wanted to put a foundation here. Another thing is that we have a lot that's on a slope, and it would be very difficult to put a slab here, and it would need a lot of excavation. So in our case, we ended up going with a 6-block foundation. Now, if you were going to use a slab, you could probably get a slab for right around $5,000. That's what I got in front of my pole barn recently, and that's about the size of some of these homes. So somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000. And these prices are going to be for Ohio, and this is in Southern Ohio. So these prices are probably good to compare with in other neighboring states, so like West Virginia, Pennsylvania, even like Indiana and stuff like that. Take it with a grain of salt if you're out in California and you're thinking about building something that these prices are not going to jive. So I'm just passing along what we paid and for things for you to consider. So our lot down here in Southern Ohio, the only improvement it had was electricity. It was already run. We had an old cabin sitting on top of it. We didn't have any septic or sewer, and we didn't have any water well. We used rainwater off the roof. So when we tore down the old cabin, we knew that we were going to upgrade to a septic system. We were going to actually have some running water in here and have flush toilets, where prior to that we were using a compost toilet. But we'll break down the type of foundation. So you have slab, a basement, or a crawl space. The slab will actually kind of sit up on blocks, so you're going to have like a crawl space under there, and you're going to have skirting around this home. If it's a double wide or a single wide, it actually comes, almost looks like a trailer that it's sitting on, but the whole trailer itself is part of the structure of the house. And what they'll do is they'll remove the axles off of that trailer, and then once this house is set on a foundation, you really have no idea that it was a prefab home or just a simple ranch house that was built. Now on top of that $117,900, let's just say $118,000, the other things you're going to need to consider. So for us, I'm going to break it down what we did here. We had to do excavation. We had a little bit of a slope here on our property, so we had to make a nice flat area here. So excavation, and where the footers were dug, the price of that was $4,000 to clear this area out, widen it up a little bit, take the slope out where the house was going to go, put a nice flat spot. And some of that excavation was due to they needed enough room to offload this house. If you have a lot where it's easily accessible from the road and you have a nice wide open area, you would not be subject to what we had to do. But the cost of just excavating and putting the footers down came to $4,000. Now the foundation we used was a 6-course block crawl space, and that foundation was sprayed with tar. There's rocks underneath it. There's drain tile all around it. The block foundation itself was $12,500, and to waterproof around it was another $1,200. Once the foundation was in, it needed to be backfilled, and sewer lines needed to be put in for downspouts, and that was an additional $4,500. Now we did have an electric service prior to that with the old cabin, but we needed to upgrade from 100 amp to 200 amps. We ended up getting a new electric pole, and then we trenched down from the pole over to the house. The new pole, the electric company came out, upgraded our pole by the street and made that a little bit taller, so there'd be a little bit more clearance when you're driving under it, because we changed the grade a little bit. And all that electrical work for that service came to a total of $4,500. Once everything was done, they came in and they brought back their piles of topsoil and regraded around here, tried to make drainage that would not affect any water coming around the house. That was another $2,000. Now we had a fairly long driveway, and it was kind of steep, so they had to do some modifications to the driveway out by the street and coming up our little hill here to make it less of a slope, so when they were delivering the house, they would have no problems getting it up our driveway, and nothing would scrape, and they wouldn't have to worry about getting stuck anywhere. So they did a lot of work on our driveway, put new gravel into it, made a makeshift driveway that we ended up keeping here next to the house, and that came to a total of $5,000. We added AC to the house. It did not come with AC in that price of $118,000, and they charged $3,500 to add AC. It did come with a furnace, so it's all electric here. We don't have any gas or anything, so everything's all electric. Total of the house was $118,000, but all those things that I just described prior, it came to a grand total of $156,600. So we opted to have the home company take care of all the things that I just mentioned, because I did not want to contract out the foundation to somebody else or the excavator to somebody else and then have numbers off or have angles off, or their foundation that somebody that I picked is off by a couple inches, and then finger pointing starts. So I had the home company take care of that side of things. I think if you would have went out shopping for an excavator, you probably could have lessened the cost of that. Then you're looking at juggling a schedule between all the other contractors, where this was pretty much handled one by one by the company. I thought it was worth whatever extra money that was to take care of that. So now you have the house, you have the foundation, but you still need some more utilities. We needed septic, which we never had before. County had to come out. They designed a septic system for us. They determined that we were going to have leach fields over to my right here, and they ended up needing to clear out a large area for these leach fields. So I got an estimate of $9,500 for the septic system. However, this gentleman did not have large enough equipment to clear out a good portion of woods that needed to be taken out to put this leach field in for the septic system. So I ended up getting a separate excavator who came. He just spent the time clearing out the area where the leach field was going to go, and he charged me $1,150 to clear out that area. So the total cost for the septic system came to $10,650, which I didn't think was too terribly bad. I got some other estimates and they were all around the $12,000 mark, and they were aware of the clearing that was going to be necessary over here. That's going to vary in your area and what type of system that needs to be put in. There are other systems that I've seen that I think are cheaper but have more maintenance on the long run, where they might have to be emptied out periodically, or pumps or filters might have to be cleaned out periodically. Where this is supposed to be maintenance free, works with gravity, and everything goes down off our hillside here. There's no pumps, there's no aerators, there's nothing taking up electricity, and they say as long as it's working okay, it doesn't really need to be pumped out. Now, water was a little bit of a dilemma for us because we do know some of the property owners nearby, especially next door, where they do have a well and they do get water from it, but it has a lot of iron in it. It's got a little bit of a sulfur smell, and they've never drank it. They usually use it for showers and dishes. When it comes to cooking and drinking, they would just always bring in bottled water to use. So we were a little leery of having a well drilled here. Talking to a couple well companies and other excavators, they could drill a well and not find water, or they could drill a well and have to go deeper. So you really don't know the actual cost of your well until they find the water or not. And then they could charge you, in this area, it was going to be anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000 just to drill the well. Now that doesn't include running the water lines and the water pumps and stuff like that. That was just to find water. Another thing is that our neighbor's well could periodically run dry if they had a lot of people there, and they would always be kind of leery if there were a good amount of people to like take it easy on taking showers. They were being pretty conservative with their water. In the summertime, they did run the risk of coming very close to drying up their well. So we really didn't want to deal with those issues. Since we're on a slope and a hillside and there's a lot of rock in this area, we do have a lot of springs coming off of this hill. So I went out in the woods and walked around, and from what I remember from hunting here all the time, I would see little things of water coming out the side of the hill constantly. I did end up finding a spring about 200 feet in this direction coming up the hill. We have not tapped into it yet, but it looks like it's going to be promising. So for our water system, we ended up going with a cistern, and either way, if we were going to get a well one day or go with the spring, it was going to be fed into the cistern. So it's 1,500 gallons. It's a concrete vault. It was ordered at the same time that the vaults were ordered for the septic system. So the concrete vault was $2,000. And then for a plumber to come in and tap in with everything, put a pump into the concrete vault, filter underneath the house, running the water lines, put in a pressure tank underneath the crawl space, everything water-wise came to a total of $5,300, and that's not with the spring tapped in. My excavator that's going to do the tap in for the spring is a little bit busy still, but he told me that the spring itself, just running 200 feet of pipe over to the cistern, putting a filter system in it up the hill a little bit and a sediment filter, just prepping it up and covering it in some concrete, that it was going to be $1,500 to just tap into what's already here down by the house. So the total for the water system going with the spring, the 1,400 gallon holding tank, all the plumbing and the work related to hooking that in is $6,800. So if you add up what we paid for the septic system, for getting the water, for the house itself, doing the excavation and clearing and everything, the total cost right now is $174,000. Now, in addition to $174,000, there's going to be prepping everything around here. So we need to plant some grass. We've had to redress the driveway a little bit with some fresh stone. We put some stone up here near the house so we could park and not have a muddy area. We're going to have to put a set of steps in going down to our fire pit. So we need to do quite a bit of landscaping, dressing up the driveway, and then just prepping stuff on the outside. So we're probably looking at another $2,000 on top of that. So from start to finish, getting this house fully functioning with electric, with water, with the sewer and septic, dressing up everything on the outside, buttoning everything up, we're right at $176,000. Now there's a few miscellaneous items that I did mention. We had to pay like $400 or $500 to the county for them to design that septic system, come out and inspect and do a perk test and get a permit for the septic system. The house company took care of all the other permits that were involved with our county. So there were no additional fees when it came to permits like that. When we tore down the old cabin, we rented a dumpster, put a good portion of the old cabin in a dumpster and burned the rest of it. So there's a couple $100 involved in that. If we would have had paid somebody to come in and level the cabin, it would have been much more expensive, but we kind of did it ourselves, and a nice excavator probably could have tore this thing down in a couple hours, and it took us a couple days. So most importantly, I just wanted to get you an idea of what the prices of things cost, what you might not think of when you go look at that prefab home and you just see a sticker for $120,000 and think, boy, we could float that. Just what other fees are going to be involved in the background to accomplish your dream. Now, would I do anything differently? So we primarily have this property as a little getaway and do some hunting here and just kind of enjoy nature, and a lot of wildlife around here. Turkeys, coyotes, lots of owls at night, bobcats running around. A little bit of a drastic difference from where we are in northern Ohio, even though we do have a lot of stuff going on in our backyard there too. But we enjoy coming down here. One thing I would look into before you decide to pull that trigger, if you're going to be spending upwards of $170,000, is maybe look around and see what's already there for sale. Maybe you could find something very similar that you're looking to build already somewhere with the acreage and the property that you're looking for. And the reason I say that is because now that we're all said and done here, our neighbor next door are selling their property. It's going up for auction. It's under auction as we speak. And had I known that they were going to do this 6 months ago before we started this whole project, I might have just bought their place, got the added acreage, leveled the cabin that used to be sitting here and just fixed that up a little bit, would give us another 40-45 acres on top of what we have here. And I think I would have done that depending if the prices were right. But I was completely taken by surprise when I learned that they were going to be selling a place next door just probably about a month or so ago. Another thing that could have changed the course of what happened here is that we had to do a lot of excavation and a lot of moving of this hillside that we're on. And we had looked into a little bit different course of action back a couple of years ago, where we thought we would build a cabin that was sitting on top of a basement, and the basement would actually be like a drive-in garage. And maybe if we would have kind of stuck to our guns on that, we had looked at another modular home that was a little bit more expensive than this, but that could have been put on a foundation. And when we looked at it at that time, we thought it was a little bit too fancy and a little bit too luxurious for what our needs were down here originally, with just having a hunting camp or coming down here periodically. But now when I look back a little bit, that modular home might have worked out okay, because this is a much nicer setting than what we had before, and that modular home would have been nicer too, but the price tag was similar to this. It also had a second floor, and we could have built it on that foundation with the drive-in garage and probably not have had to disturb as much dirt around here to remove the slope to set the house on. We probably could have kept the original lay of the land, so it would have been less cost in excavating, maybe a little bit more cost in the foundation, because instead of 6 courses, we're going to be going with probably 12. But once you start laying courses of block, it's usually just a couple $100 per course to put on top of that. So that wouldn't have been too terrible. Plus, we would have a place to store our vehicles, and it would be a little bit more secure. But originally that plan just seemed a little bit too luxurious at the time, but now looking back at what this cost and what we needed to do to achieve this, it probably would have been almost a wash between the two, and we would have a nice drive-in garage. So I thought I would just kind of share that for you if you're preparing to do the same similar project. If you have some land somewhere and you want to put something on it that you don't want to try to build conventionally, and you think that you're driving past these home places, you see that price tag, and you think to yourself, that doesn't seem too bad. I just wanted to tell you all the other costs involved associated with what we did. Some folks might not have to do such an elaborate change to the foundation, so some things might be cheaper, or some things might be a little bit more expensive, just depending. Just gives you a rough idea what's involved, what it took for us to do this, what it cost for us to do this, and hopefully it helps somebody out that's also thinking about doing the same thing. So I appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoy and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know a new one's coming out, and keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.